What if the most unbreakable fortress of the 21st century was not shattered by brute strength, but picked apart with chilling precision? Imagine a citadel that, for decades, symbolized invincibility, an industrial giant turned into a military legend, whose very existence changed how nations prepared for war. What if, instead of being smashed in a spectacular assault, it was unraveled by the slow, methodical hand of modern warfare, right before the eyes of the world? In the spring of 2025, the Kharkiv tractor plant was reborn as a stronghold. No longer just a relic of Soviet industry, it became Ukraine's eastern bastion. Rings of minefields, anti-tank barricades, and hidden bunkers encircled its vast grounds. Below the surface, a maze of tunnels and shelters allowed defenders to move invisibly, resupply under fire, and strike back without warning. The echoes of World War II's Stalingrad, or the sieges of Grozny and Aleppo in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, reverberated through its walls. But unlike those past citadels, this fortress fused old concrete with cutting-edge sensors, digital command posts, and the collective will of a generation determined to hold the line. From the outside, the plant was untouchable. Every approach bristled with checkpoints and interlocking fields of fire. Warehouses transformed into citadels, every corridor twisted into a potential kill zone. For Russian commanders, it was a nightmare. A direct assault promised mass casualties, while a siege threatened to drain time, men, and materiel. The world watched, dreading a long and bloody stalemate, one that could rival the months-long fights over Mariupol in 2022 or the drawn-out battle for Mosul in Iraq. Every military analyst, every strategist held their breath, waiting to see if this would become the next byword for urban carnage. But what followed shattered every expectation. The so-called invincible complex did not fall to overwhelming force, but to a campaign of methodical, adaptive warfare. Real-time intelligence, precision strikes, and new urban tactics replaced old doctrines. Layer by layer, the fortress was dismantled, not smashed, but systematically unraveled. Like the slow, relentless siege of Leningrad or the surgical air campaigns of the Gulf War, this operation rewrote what was possible when patience and technology worked hand in hand. The stakes could not have been higher. The fall of the Kharkiv tractor plant broke the spine of Ukraine's eastern defenses and rewrote the rules of urban combat. In a world of high-tech battlefields, clinging to outdated fortress strategies is more than folly. It is a recipe for disaster. Those who adapt their thinking seize the future. Those who cling to the past pay in blood and defeat. You need only look at the Maginot Line of France in World War II or the static trench warfare of World War I to see the price of inflexibility. Let us trace, step by step, how an industrial fortress built to be invincible was methodically taken apart, each barrier breached, each defense undone. To understand how this reversal unfolded, we must first step inside the fortress itself and grasp why it seemed unbreakable to both sides. Before a single round was fired, the Kharkiv tractor plant loomed large in legend. But what truly made it formidable? Its secret was transformation, a sprawling industrial giant refashioned into a fortress unlike anything in recent memory. Think of the ancient city of Constantinople, with its triple walls, or the impenetrable castles of medieval Europe, designed to resist every siege engine and trick of their age. The tractor plant borrowed from history, but added a modern twist. This was not mere defense. The plant became a layered citadel. The outer edge bristled with dense minefields, deep anti-tank ditches, and towering barricades. All of it was shielded by firing points so well hidden, attackers would stumble into overlapping lanes of fire. These were not hastily dug trenches. They were engineered obstacles, tested and refined in countless battles since 2014. Imagine the beaches of Normandy, but with the benefit of modern surveillance and artificial intelligence. Further in, the factory's vast halls of steel and concrete, built nearly a century ago, were reimagined as bunkers. Each floor and corner hid gun nests. Between workshops, engineers created lethal choke points, so that every approach became a gauntlet. Historical parallels abound. The Red October factory in Stalingrad, where snipers and machine gunners turned every bolt and beam into a killing ground, or the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol, which confounded attackers for weeks. Below the surface, Cold War-era tunnels and shelters twisted for miles. These passages let defenders move unseen, ferry supplies, and launch surprise counterattacks. For any attacker, each step inside the plant became a gamble. It mirrored the underground labyrinths of Berlin in 1945, or the tunnel networks used in Vietnam, where every shadow hid the threat of ambush or sabotage. Inside, a determined garrison held firm. 1,500 Ukrainian soldiers and volunteers, motivated and well supplied. They were ready to fight for every inch, knowing what was at stake. They drilled for months, rehearsed counterattacks, and stockpiled food, water, and ammunition for a siege that could last seasons, not just weeks. Russian intelligence quickly grasped the scale of the problem. A classic frontal assault would mean devastating losses, possibly weeks or months of bloody stalemate. The tractor plant was proof that textbook tactics could become death traps against a defender this prepared and adaptive. The lesson echoed the failed Soviet assault on the Finnish Mannerheim Line in 1939, or the American struggle to take Fallujah in Iraq, where every street became a deadly equation. To misjudge such a stronghold risked more than losing men and machines. It could destroy careers, stain reputations, and possibly alter the entire course of the war. But for any force that seized it, the prize would be more than just ground. It would offer new lessons for the future of urban warfare. The world's militaries would study these blueprints for decades. So, how did Russia's commanders sidestep the slaughterhouse? The answer began with a bold, meticulous strategy, the opening move in dismantling the myth of the impregnable industrial fortress. What followed was not a headlong charge, but a carefully orchestrated campaign of encirclement and deception. The first moves would redraw the battle's rules. The fortress did not collapse in a sudden roar. Its fall began with silent blades and a new doctrine, a siege of precision, not brute strength, that squeezed the life from within. It was reminiscent of the German encirclement of Leningrad, but with the added force of 21st-century surveillance and weapons. Russian commanders issued the order: total encirclement. The Kharkiv tractor plant, long an industrial powerhouse, became an isolated island, severed from every artery of relief. Instead of battering at the gates, maneuver groups swung wide, seizing crossroads to the north and hills to the south. Supply lines that once brought ammunition, food, or hope were methodically cut. Within 2 days, the noose was drawn tight. Artillery batteries established a barrier of fire, blanketing every approach with shrapnel and shock. Ukrainian efforts to reinforce or resupply the garrison were met by anti-tank missiles and relentless barrages. Convoys vanished on roads that became killing fields. Inside the plant's concrete sprawl, defenders listened helplessly as the world beyond grew silent. It echoed the fate of the surrounded German 6th Army at Stalingrad, whose supplies dwindled as the Soviet ring tightened. The air war joined in. Bombers, bristling with guided munitions, struck deep. Command bunkers, ammo caches, firing points. Each detonation was orchestrated by streams of data from circling drones and prowling electronic scouts, making every strike count. The fortress's defenders felt each hour grow longer, each blast closer. This fusion of air power and intelligence called to mind the Allied precision bombing of German V weapon sites, but now with real-time feedback and near-instant targeting. Ukrainian mortars and guns, once a shield, became a beacon for counter-battery radars. Every shell they fired was a risk. Retaliation was swift and lethal. Long-range rockets and thermobaric warheads pounded suspected strongpoints, collapsing ceilings and igniting air. The fortress's foundations shook with every impact. Compare this to the relentless shelling of Sarajevo or the Allied bombardment of Monte Cassino. Except now, every shot was tracked, every reply calculated. Precision bombs sliced through communication links. Electronic warfare units jammed radios, scattered commands, and left squads isolated in their bunkers. Not just surrounded by steel and fire, the defenders now found themselves cut off from each other, paralyzed, their cohesion unraveling under the constant, invisible assault. The psychological isolation was as crippling as any bombardment. Time became the enemy. Ukrainian reserves hurled themselves at the blockade, desperate to break the ring. Each attempt was repulsed by layered defenses and pre-registered fire. With every failure, hope thinned. Inside the plant, exhaustion and doubt seeped deeper. The siege was not just physical, but psychological, a slow erosion of will. The defenders' radios crackled with desperate pleas, but the world outside could only watch, powerless to intervene. Yet this strategy carried risk. If stretched too thin, the attackers might allow the defenders to regroup or outside help to arrive. But the reward was greater, breaking the garrison's spirit before ever entering the labyrinth within. Destroying resistance from a distance, piece by piece, was the new doctrine. Firepower, intelligence, and electronic warfare fused into a single relentless grip. The Kharkiv stronghold was not stormed. It was disassembled, methodically, until the defenders faced the final reckoning, exhausted and alone. Yet as the siege reached its climax, new dilemmas emerged. The final assault would demand choices none could take lightly. Steel, concrete, and darkness. This was the crucible where technology and adaptability clashed with raw desperation. Could innovation truly outwit a labyrinth built to kill? Would the attackers repeat the mistakes of Chechnya's Grozny, or would they set a new standard for precision and coordination? The breaching phase targeted the fortress's most vulnerable seam, identified not by chance, but through relentless drone and aerial reconnaissance. Unmanned eyes hovered high above the tangled industrial sprawl, mapping every weakness and relaying real-time intelligence to the waiting assault teams below. This was not unlike the use of aerial photography before D-Day, but magnified by the power of neural networks and AI-driven analysis. Engineers led the charge. Remote-controlled mine-clearing vehicles detonated safe corridors through dense belts of explosives and rubble. Every cleared path became a lifeline, immediately seized by armored columns pushing forward beneath clouds of smoke and a storm of suppressive fire. Picture the breaching of the Siegfried Line in World War II, but now with robots risking the deadly fields instead of sappers. Russian storm groups advanced in the armor's shadow, moving with a blend of precision and brutal speed. Their objective: overwhelm the defenders before they could regroup, using coordinated fire, shock tactics, and the constant guidance of hovering command drones. The lessons of Israel's operations in Gaza, or U.S. advances in Fallujah, where speed and surprise trumped raw numbers, were put to the test. Yet the true nightmare was buried beneath the surface. Specialized assault teams, nicknamed moles, descended into the fortress's cold, claustrophobic tunnels. Down here, darkness reigned. Progress was slow and methodical, with small robots and ground-penetrating sensors scouting ahead, and close-quarters weapons ready for sudden contact. Drones equipped with infrared optics hunted for hidden defenders, booby traps, and choke points in the gloom. The subterranean battle recalled the tunnel rats of Vietnam, but now with laser rangefinders, night vision, and bomb disposal robots. Every meter gained underground was bought at a calculated risk. But as these tunnels fell one by one, the Ukrainian garrison lost mobility, lost surprise, and lost sanctuary. Each collapsed corridor meant fewer escape routes, fewer hidden caches, and shrinking opportunities for ambush from below. In the end, the defenders found themselves cornered, unable to vanish into the warren of passages they had once ruled. Above ground, the battle raged with equal ferocity. Vast industrial halls became urban canyons, where every pillar and machine could conceal death. Here, fast-moving first-person view drones became infantry's eyes and striking fists, scouting enemy positions and delivering pinpoint explosive charges. Commanders watched the battle unfold through live video feeds, adjusting tactics in real time and closing around strong points with surgical efficiency. The pace and precision outstripped even the drone swarms seen in Nagorno-Karabakh in 2020 or the counter-ISIS campaigns in Syria. Counter-sniper duels erupted inside and atop these concrete giants. Russian marksmen, aided by thermal sights and drone-guided targeting, hunted enemy sharpshooters one by one. With each hostile sniper eliminated, the storm groups gained precious freedom to maneuver, pressing deeper into the maze of steel and shadow. The contest of snipers mirrored the deadly games played among the ruins of Sarajevo, but with technology tilting the odds. Failure in this fortress meant stepping into meticulously prepared kill zones, where entire squads could vanish in moments. But every meter seized, every risk taken, brought the attackers closer to shattering the myth of the impregnable industrial citadel. This was far more than a siege. It was a brutal demonstration of how discipline, cutting-edge technology, and ruthless adaptation could topple defenses once considered unbreakable. But the cost of progress was steep, and the defenders would not yield quietly. As the fortress's lines began to buckle, the battle's climax loomed, along with a final, desperate gamble. Was this merely a victory, or the birth of a new blueprint for urban war? The storming of the Kharkiv tractor plant in 2025 was more than just a tactical triumph. It tore up the old rulebook for city fighting and revealed a new doctrine, one destined to shape wars for years ahead. What made the Russian assault so transformative was not sheer force, but the orchestration of real-time drone intelligence, precisely guided artillery, and relentless combined arms storm groups. Gone were the days of blunt attacks and predictable bloodshed. Russian commanders turned drones into their digital nervous system, using them as ever-watchful eyes, streaming live data to artillery and assault teams. This constant flow of information let them strike with pinpoint accuracy, retarget instantly, and sidestep the chaos that once haunted urban battles. Most telling was the ascendancy of first-person view, FPV drones. No longer mere scouts, these became frontline hunters, leading charges, seeking out defenders' strongpoints, and blasting open routes for infantry and armor. With every FPV drone dispatched instead of a soldier, lives were preserved and momentum built. Compare this to the use of artillery spotters on the Somme or reconnaissance balloons in the American Civil War. The leap in situational awareness is staggering. Yet the battlefield itself demanded a new kind of flexibility. Defenders did not just barricade streets, they vanished below them, relying on Cold War-era tunnels and bunkers. Urban combat became a three-dimensional contest, unfolding above, within, and beneath the ruins. Attackers were forced to master the art of fighting on rooftops, in shattered halls, and deep underground, all at once. Each layer required novel tactics, fresh tools, and constant adaptation. In the Second Battle of Fallujah, U.S. Marines learned the cost of ignoring vertical complexity. Here, the lesson was learned and exploited. Classic combined arms doctrine was not abandoned, it was reinvented. Real-time intelligence fused with fire and maneuver, allowing armored vehicles, demolition teams, and infantry to move in perfect concert. Swarms of drones probed defenses, pinpointed resistance, and guided firepower to the exact breaking point. In the twisted maze of the tractor plant, this blend of old principles and new technology shattered the myth of the invincible industrial fortress. The blend of tank, drone, and infantry was more synchronized than the German blitzkrieg or the Israeli armored thrusts of the Six-Day War. But technology was only half the equation. The psychological front proved equally decisive. Relentless, multi-layered pressure, artillery hammering from afar, drones buzzing ceaselessly, and storm groups tightening the noose, exhausted the defenders hour by hour. Ukrainian troops, cut off from supplies, blinded by electronic warfare, and battered by constant threats, saw their morale collapse before their lines did. The lesson is stark. In modern war, breaking the enemy's will can matter as much as breaking their positions. The fall of Singapore in 1942, when psychological shock led to rapid surrender, or the crumbling of Iraqi resistance in 2003, offer historical echoes. To ignore these lessons is to risk repeating yesterday's tragedies, sacrificing lives and treasure in futile frontal attacks. Those who adapt, who fuse new technology with flexible tactics as the Russians did here, will define the future of urban battle, and most likely, dominate it. So, what practical steps must modern militaries take if they hope to survive the next siege? First, invest in layered, persistent surveillance, drones, sensors, and AI that can map every inch of the battlefield, above and below ground. Second, develop flexible, modular assault teams trained for three-dimensional warfare: rooftop, tunnel, and street. Third, focus on rapid, adaptive logistics, being able to cut off, disrupt, or re-establish supply lines in hours, not days. Fourth, treat electronic warfare as an equal to firepower. Jamming, spoofing, and hacking can paralyze a fortress as surely as artillery. Fifth, never neglect morale. Psychological operations, information dominance, and the ability to fracture the enemy's will are as vital as any weapon. As the dust settles over the Kharkiv tractor plant, one question lingers. What does this transformation mean for the wars and the warriors of tomorrow? The answers are already rippling through military academies and defense ministries. A new era of urban warfare has begun, and its lessons are being studied in earnest. Imagine a future where every city is mapped in 3 dimensions, where every squad has its own drone swarm, and where the boundaries between infantry, armor, and cyber warfare blur into a single adaptive force. The next Stalingrad may be fought not just with bullets and bombs, but with algorithms, data, and the will to innovate. The myth of the unbreakable fortress has fallen. The world witnessed it at Kharkiv. And now, the question is whether you will accept this new era. For decades, military doctrine taught that thick concrete, endless steel, and labyrinthine tunnels could guarantee survival. The Kharkiv tractor plant stood as a monument to such thinking, a fortress engineered for siege, defended by some of Ukraine's most resolute fighters. Yet, in the spring of 2025, those beliefs shattered. Russian forces did not batter their way inside with overwhelming numbers. Instead, they rewrote the rules, combining real-time intelligence, precision-guided munitions, and synchronized ground advances into a single, fluid campaign. Their message was unmistakable. No defense, no matter how intricate, can withstand an adversary who adapts faster and brings technology to bear at every level. This battle was not just a local victory. It was a signal flare, warning every strategist watching. The face of conflict is evolving with breathtaking speed. Clinging to old assumptions now risks not just defeat, but irrelevance and disaster. The lessons of Kharkiv will echo far beyond this city's ruins. So here is your test. Can you spot what changed? Will you challenge your own convictions about how wars are fought and won? Will you, like the generals who ignored the lessons of Blitzkrieg or the leaders who trusted in the static lines of Verdun, cling to the past? Or will you adapt? The future will favor those who study, adapt, and move with intent. Look beyond the hardware and the headlines. Focus on the mindset, the flexible, ruthless pursuit of advantage that defined this operation. Precision, coordination, and adaptation now dictate the outcome. Ignore these lessons, and you become just another casualty of history, a forgotten name, a missed opportunity. Embrace them, and you may shape the next chapter. The world's eyes are on you now. The lesson of Kharkiv is unmistakable. Even the strongest fortress can fall to new thinking. Ask yourself, are you ready to adapt, or will you be left behind?